worst case scenario, say someone hasn't collected sales tax for years. What can happen? I mean, can there be criminal charges?
Generally, to answer your question, yes, there can be. So these are the kind of different ways that can happen. So let's say that you collect tax and don't remit it. If a state finds out that, and this is easy to do, right? Because you find out about sales tax, you're frantic, so you start collecting it in Shopify, just using the Shopify as an example. And then you have this sales tax that you're collecting, and some people think that's all they have to do. Collect it. Okay, we're done. Like, we're collecting sales tax. Well, collecting it, that's the state's property. So what happens is if a state comes and asks you questions and you get audited, usually what happens is, they'll say, well, I thought this is what I had to do. The state will say, okay, there was no criminal intent here. So, pay us what you owe us plus penalties, et cetera. And we'll call it even. The situation where you could have criminal charges is if you get a state that comes in and the individual seller, hints at or indicates like, hey, I knew what I was doing this whole time. I just wasn't paying the tax. Like, I knew I was collecting it. I was just, pushing off actually filing these returns. That could be an issue. And that's kind of where the criminal charges take place, or could take place. Most of the time, what's going to happen is you're going to become aware of this obligation at some point in time. And, you're going to start wanting to comply. And what's going to happen is, let's say, January of this year, you became aware of this and you said, okay, well, I figured all this out. I needed to collect sales tax beginning January of last year. If that's the case, and you register and we go through all this process and you get everything cleaned up, it's just going to be interest and penalties that you have to worry about. And then the other part of that is, you didn't charge your customer. So this is coming directly out of your profits because the customer didn't pay for it. So I would say, the number one, the most likely consequence is that you're going to have some back filing requirements, and you're going to have to pay some interest and penalties because of the late filings, the failure to pay, late payment, things of that nature. Criminal charges are definitely a thing. But, there has to be criminal intent generally. I'm not an attorney, but generally there has to be criminal intent to get criminal charges. The other thing that could happen is if, let's say you get everything filed, or you get audited and the state says you owe them $15,000 or something, just as an example, and you just never pay it. Well, if you never pay it, they can levy, obviously, I know you've heard those commercials, the IRS can levy your bank account, et cetera. Well, the state can levy your bank account, and they can they can place a levy on your assets until you pay them. So obviously you don't want that. That's not a good thing. So those are kind of the three main concerns, but the most likely is that you're just going to have to pay some interest and penalties. But the quicker you get it handled, the lower those penalties will be. The longer this stuff remains outstanding, the larger the penalties and interest grow too.